because it is now 10 o'clock and it is time to get the show on the road. So, as we do with all classes, I want everybody to remember that I see your comments and I see your messages coming in, but I can't greet you all individually anymore because class has begun. Today, we are talking about sea creatures. Before we get into sea creatures, let me tell you guys a couple of things that are going on. Let me give you a reminder real quick about the private lessons we now offer through our website. If any of you would like your own private lesson for just your own child or a group of friends or a school, classmates, whatever you want to do, if you choose to do your lessons, you go to our website, dinosaurgeorge.com. You can see it in our on our catalog. If you choose to do one of these between now and the last day of May, the price has been reduced to only $50. When you go order it through the catalog, there is a coupon code and you type in the word SALE, S-A-L-E, and that gets you the $50 price. So if you are interested in having your own private lesson, that's available. Next thing, biggest thing, book came out. I am very, very excited and very proud about this book. And by the way, just for everybody out there, this book is dedicated to my friend Alex. And when you look on the inside page, there's a dedication to my very good friend Alex. I dedicated the book to you, Alex. I know, Alex, you're much older than this book was written for, but I dedicated it to you simply because I think of you as a nephew, and I think of your family as my family. So the book is out. When you look on the Dinosaur George Jr. page, or you can look on the Dinosaur George page, you'll see that Alexis has put a link there that will take you to Amazon where you can pre-order the book in advance. And once the books have been printed, I don't think they come out until June, but once the books are printed, one of the things that we are planning on doing is a book signing event. These books will be on my website as well. They're not on there now because we haven't gotten them in yet. But once we get ready to do the book signing, it will be a virtual book signing. For anybody that places an order through our site, we will I will autograph your books for you live on a live video, and then we'll mail them to you. So it's kind of like being there. It's not the same thing, but that's where we are in society. So very, very proud that my first book came out, and there are some really, really cool dinosaurs, like Allosaurus. All right, time for the schedule. Here we go. This Friday, 10 o'clock. Dragons, Legends, and Myths. You don't want to miss this one. This one's going to be a good one. Tell all of your friends because this one's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about the legend of prehistoric animals. I mean, the legend of different animals, and I'm going to reference them to prehistoric animals that used to be alive. Then on Tuesday, April 28th, we're doing Dinosaur Mistakes and Errors. This one's going to be kind of cool because this class will talk about some of the most common misunderstandings and mistakes that people make about dinosaurs. It will be very informative and it will be very interesting, and I think you'll enjoy it. And then Friday, May 1st, we're doing a class on pterosaurs, the pterodactyls, the flying reptiles. Now, you only see 3. The reason why I have not listed the next classes into May is because I'm not really certain at this point which classes I'm going to do. I'm still taking suggestions from all of you on which topic you'd like to do, and so I'll add those when the time comes up. The hardest part about today's lesson was choosing the animals to talk about because there are thousands and thousands of different ancient sea creatures. So I tried to pick the most interesting, the ones I thought were the most unique. We certainly can't cover all of them. And so if I don't talk about one that you like, please understand it was really hard for me to figure out which ones to fit in because this class can only last about 45 minutes. So, one last thing I want to mention again publicly. Alexis and Michelle are both working incredibly hard to help this company get back on its feet again. And I just want to publicly say how much I appreciate what they're doing. Right now, the biggest challenge is being able to pay our staff, and yet these two people are just helping to try to help. And I appreciate that very much. So everybody, give them all a round of applause, and it wouldn't hurt at all for you to drop in comments about saying thank you to them for all the work that they are doing to help with this. So let's get started with the first ancient sea creature. This one is a creepy one. This is Jacolepterus. This animal is sometimes called the sea scorpion. You can see how big it is next to a human. This is one of the creepiest looking things you'll ever see. Now, this animal dates back before the age of dinosaurs. Long before dinosaurs existed, these sea scorpions were swimming the ancient seaways. Those pinching claws would have been perfect for grabbing on and holding anything that tried to get away, and it would have been a very scary sight. So we're starting off with going way back into time and recognizing that life started in the ocean and some of the strangest animals lived there, and that's one of them. Now let's move into something we call bony and armored fish. The word bony fish means that it is a fish whose body has a lot of bones. Sharks are not a bony fish because sharks don't have bones. So we're going to start off with bony fish. The one you're looking at right there is a fish called Xiphactinus. Oh, I forgot to tell you what your project is for today, by the way. One of the things you're going to notice in all of these images and animals I talk about, I'm not listing their sizes. I want you to choose at least one animal from today's lesson, and I want you to research it and go to the Dinosaur George Jr. Facebook page and post how big it was. I want to know how big it was and where it lived. I want those two things. That's your project for today. Find an animal that I showed you in this class. You can go back and rewatch the video again. If it goes by too fast, you can go back and stop it. Write its name down. Find out how big it is and when it lived. Those are the two things I want you to give me, okay? So if somebody decides to start off with Jacolepterus, that would be a scary choice. But let's jump back in now to the bony and armored fish. That's a fish called Xiphactinus, and I chose him and one other one because they are so weird. Xiphactinus starts with the letter X, but its name is pronounced like the letter Z, like we do with the word xylophone. Xiphactinus starts with an X, so it's not Xiphactinus, it is Xiphactinus. It has incredibly large teeth and would have been a very dangerous predator. It even has, on top of its head, a fin, almost like the fin of a shark. That is a stabilizer. What that means is when that fish is swimming really fast, his head isn't shaking back and forth because the stabilizer, the fin on his head, keeps him moving straight so that when he swims in to attack, his head is straight. That's what that fin on top of his head is for. That fin, see where his eye is, that little round circle? Look behind it. So Xiphactinus was very large and very dangerous, but the other fish beside it is called Saurodon. The word sauro means lizard, don means tooth. So this animal's name is lizard tooth, but it is a fish. It simply has that name because its teeth are like the teeth of a lizard. But Saurodon is not related to lizards. And you talk about a weird fish. Get a load of how long and skinny this fish is. Saurodon was a very, very long, skinny fish, and yet it has that big spike right on the end of its jaw. Let's go back and look at it from this other direction. Look how weird that is. That strange looking spear, we don't really understand what it's for. We can't really say for any certainty what it used it for. It may have used it to spear fish. I mean, that may have been what it did. It may have actually speared fish as it attacked. So Saurodon is a very unusual looking fish. He's got that long, skinny body, and he is odd. So that's an example of two of the bony fish. Now let's talk about an armored fish. This one's pretty amazing. This is Dunkleosteus. Dunkleosteus. I always say Dunkleosteus. Dunkleosteus is an armored fish and is really large. Look at the size of this thing. Now, this thing is big, but its skull is the thing that is so unbelievable. Its skull is gigantic, and it's covered in complete and absolute body armor. It is body armor, which is just, that to me is pretty amazing that the fact that it has this body armor on it, but that skull is protected from anything. And look at its jaws. Look at its teeth. Here's the thing that's so weird about Dunkleosteus. The way its mouth is, those are not teeth. That's actually bone that is shaped like a tooth. It's not a tooth. It can't come out. It's bone. Imagine if instead of having teeth, we just had sharp bones sticking out. That's what he's got in his mouth. He's got big, sharp bones. And the way that they work is when this animal opens and closes its mouth, those are called self-sharpening teeth. Now, again, they're not really teeth, right? They're jaws, but self-sharpening. Here's how it works. When he bites, they come together and they pass next to each other and they grind against each other. And by grinding next to them, they are making the edges sharp. Like if you've ever watched your parents sharpen a knife, they're making the edge sharp. Well, every time this animal bit, its jaws, its teeth came together and they were self-sharpening. And here's the weirdest thing about this animal, what I think is weird. When it bites, it doesn't open its mouth like you and I. When we bite, our mandible moves. Our head stays still. Mandible moves, skull is solid. It's not the way it is with him. The way he works, his mandible doesn't move. The top of his head goes back and forth. If you and I ate that way, you'd put food in your mouth and you'd go, oh. Don't do that, by the way. Your parents will be furious. So when it chews, instead of its lower jaw opening and closing, its upper skull opens and closes. It is one of the weirdest dudes you've ever seen. But look at those powerful, powerful jaws. This thing had one of the strongest bites of any fish, and it was one of the earliest. This one dates back to, I think, is it Devonian? I believe it's Devonian. They lived during the Devonian age. So if you want to do your lesson on Dunkleosteus, you can write down how big it was and where it lived. Or when it lived. I'm sorry, when it lived. But I think it's Devonian. So I just did your homework for you. What do you think of that? Now, those fish are pretty cool. All the ones that I've showed you are pretty cool. But let's talk about something that was gigantic. Let's talk about Ichthys. Ichthys is a filter feeder. That means that it does not chew its food. Like my friend Emilio's favorite shark, the basking shark, Ichthys swam with its mouth open, and as little tiny plankton and single-celled animals and little shrimps and even little fish, as it would swim by with its mouth open, it would trap those things and eat it. Can anybody think of any other animal that is a filter feeder alive today that lives in the ocean? Can anybody think of one? I mentioned a basking shark, but can anybody think of some of the other animals that would have had behavior like Ichthys that swims around with their mouth open, catching anything that can swim in? Let's see. Would it be, what could do it? Some carp do it. Whale sharks. Thank you, Veronica. Nicely done. Whale sharks is an example of another filter feeder that exists today. Very nicely done. Whale sharks are one of them. Emma, of course, you knew whale sharks. Emma, you know so much about sea life, you could probably name 500 of them. Baleen whales. Nicely done, JW. Very nicely done, like the blue whale and the gray whale and the humpback. They are filter feeders as well. Very, as well. Very nicely done. That thing is big, Megan, isn't it? Yeah, look at the size of that thing next to me. So these are example of some of the fish, bony and armored fish. Now let's move into an animal that most people really like. I love these things very, very much. Paddlefish, that's a good one. Whale shark is a good one. Very, very good. Let's talk about the ichthyosaurs. Ichthyosaurs, the word ichthyo means fish, saur means lizard, fish lizard. They call these fish lizards when they discovered them because they knew they were not fish, they were reptiles. And that's why they have the name ichthyosaur. There were a lot of different ichthyosaurs. Ichthyosaur is the name of the family. Remember how we talk about we have animal families, right? The big family of swimming creatures. Within that, there's lots of families. Bony fish, sharks, ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, pliosaurs. Well, ichthyosaurs are an example of one of the families. And there are a variety of different members. Look at the size of Shonisaurus. Shonisaurus is a gigantic ichthyosaur. That thing is absolutely gigantic. But the most common one is the one called Ichthyosaurus. Remember, ichthyosaurs is the name of the family. Ichthyosaurus was the name of one of the members. These animals, you know, when you look at them, your first thought are, these things look like dolphins. Well, that's because there is something called convergent evolution. Let me explain what convergent evolution is. I've talked about it once before in another lesson. Convergent evolution is where two animals that are not closely related look very similar to each other. And that's because they have evolved for a certain food source. Like, for instance, Brachiosaurus has a long neck to reach up into conifer trees. Giraffes have a long neck to reach up into acacia trees. They both have very long necks, but they are not related to each other. Well, with ichthyosaurs, let's talk about the dolphins and ichthyosaurs and why they are two different things. On the left, you see ichthyosaurs. Look at the dolphins on the other side, and I want you to try to recognize some differences between them. Look at the two pictures and tell me, what are some of the differences you see? Yes, they look very similar. They both live in the ocean. They both breathe air, but there's differences about them, and this is called convergent evolution. This is where two animals can look similar, but they're not related to each other. Dolphins are mammals, ichthyosaurs are reptiles. But take a look at those things. Do you notice how the tail, look at the tail of an ichthyosaur and look at the tail of a dolphin. Ichthyosaurs' tails go up and down. Dolphins' tails are flat. Look at the fins on the side. Dolphins have 2, ichthyosaurs have 4. So, correct, Emma, the flukes are pointed in different directions. Look at their noses. That's another good point. Tanya makes a good point. Look at their noses. Look at their tails. Look at their body shapes. So even though we have two animals that look very, very similar to each other who live in the same environment, that does not mean they are related. That is convergent evolution, and that's what happens when animals adapt. You guys want to see something I think is amazing? Its name is Stupendomize. The word stupendous, you ever heard of stupendous? That means giant. Stupendomize was a giant freshwater turtle. It did not live in the ocean. It lived in rivers. This thing is the size of a car. Stupendomize was the size of a car. It was absolutely enormous. Crocodiles didn't eat this thing because they couldn't eat it. There was no way. Its shell was too thick and too heavy. So Stupendomize is a giant swimming turtle. Well, all turtles swim. A giant swimming turtle. And it's big. But there was a bigger turtle than Stupendomize. That was Archelon. Archelon is a huge, huge sea turtle. This is the largest turtle that ever existed. Archelon is so enormous. I saw where they found a specimen, if I understood this correctly, they found a specimen whose flipper was almost 9 feet long. Think about that for a moment. Think about the size of a sea turtle whose flipper is taller than any human. These things were enormous, and I cannot imagine when they came on shore to lay their eggs, I cannot imagine how hard it was for them to pull that massive body all the way up onto the beach. But they did, because they would have laid eggs just like modern loggerhead turtles and green turtles and sea turtles do today. So Archelon is an example of a gigantically large turtle, and that thing is big. Let's talk about another family, one that I think a lot of us like. That's the Plesiosaur family. Plesiosaurs are also very amazing looking animals. Now, this particular plesiosaur is called Elasmosaurus. Elasmosaurus is a member of the plesiosaur family. It's also the animal people call the Loch Ness Monster. Well, Elasmosaurus is amazing because of that long neck, and it was probably used to catch fish. What they think is, as it's swimming through the water, that long neck could chase fish around. It would be easier to move your neck than moving that giant body. So I believe that plesiosaurs had those 4 big flippers to help them turn that body, but that the long neck would have been used to catch their food. So Elasmosaurus is cool, but take a look at this thing. Its name is Tanystropheus. Take a close look at Elasmosaurus. Take a close look at Tanystropheus. Are these the same animal? Are these the same animal? Or is there an example of convergent evolution? Elasmosaurus, the one on the top, lived its life in the water. Tanystropheus, the one on the bottom, could live its life on land. But we believe that Tanystropheus, now all of the skeletons ever found of Tanystropheus are always found along the ocean. So we believe these animals are living in the ocean. And like I said about Elasmosaurus with that long neck, we believe that Tanystropheus used that long neck to catch fish. But rather than having flippers like Elasmosaurus, Tanystropheus has legs and feet. These are 2 animals. Now, because they're both reptiles, they are related to each other. But that's an example of how 2 different animals can have the same basic features. All right. Uh-oh. Anybody up for sharks? Sharks are pretty amazing animals, true. They've been around forever. Let's start with one of the strangest sharks you will ever see. Helicoprion, or Helicoprion, depending on how you prefer to say its name. This is one of the oddest evolutionary traits I've ever seen of any animal alive today. I do not understand why it has that round, we call it a whorl, why he has that thing in his lower jaw. And more importantly, there's a lot of debate between paleontologists as to whether or not that is exactly the shape. Some paleontologists believe that that thing could unroll like a tongue. Others believe that instead of being curled inside of its mouth, it curled down below its mouth. There's a lot of debate because not a lot has been found from Helicoprion. We cannot say with any certainty what this thing is. But what we do know is it's certainly a member of the shark family, and it is as weird as it gets. Well, it's not as weird as it gets, because there was Ichthyosaurs, who's even weirder, in my opinion. At first glance, you're like, hey, it's a dolphin. Let's swim over and give it a hug. I would advise you to take a good hard look at its teeth, though. Take a look at the teeth sticking out of the mouth of Ichthyosaurs. Yes, he looks like a dolphin from his body, but there is nothing dolphin-y about Ichthyosaurs. That shark has a mouthful of very, very sharp, big, freaky-looking teeth. This thing is absolutely terrifying. And what's really weird is it can't close its mouth like other sharks. Its teeth are always sticking out there. I believe that means that because his teeth are always out, he can't close his mouth like a shark. His teeth are always sticking out. What I think that means is he swims at a high rate, and if you're an unsuspecting fish, he just rams you. I think what he does is he just swims as fast as he can into a school of fish, And anybody he hits is going to be sawed up with those teeth. Then he'll circle back around and come back and eat you at his convenience. That's why I believe that Adestus has those teeth sticking out. And now let's end with a very, very weird looking shark. Its name is Stethocanthus. I call him Velcro Head. You know what Velcro is? Like what you probably have on your shoes? Well, Stethocanthus has 2 sections on its body that are covered with these sharp, teethy things. I do not know what they're for. Nobody knows what they're for. People use different things. They think it might have been used for taste, like they could taste through them, but why would you turn upside down and ram your head against something to taste it? Some people think that helped them attach themselves to bigger animals. I don't know. I don't know what the function is and why it's got those platforms on its head. But if you choose Stethocanthus as the animal you're going to do your project on, it would be interesting. You'll be interested to see how big that shark really is. It might help you figure out what it's using those platforms for. We just don't know. Okay, so I think that's all the sharks anybody wants to learn about, right? Yeah, I agree. Because there's no other shark that anybody would find interesting. So let's get into Mosasaurs. Now, Mosasaurs, in one of the Jurassic World movies, or in the Jurassic World movie, they really confused a lot of people. And I will talk more about this when I do that lesson on the mistakes that people have made. Let me just say for the record that Mosasaurs were not as big as they showed in this particular clip. But there was a bunch of different kinds of Mosasaurs. Mosasaurs came in all shapes and sizes. Here are 2 of the medium-sized Mosasaurs. There is Platecarpus and Clydastes. Both of these are very dangerous animals. They are both reptiles. They breathe air. They have to come up for air. They ate fish. They ate sharks. They ate turtles. They ate other Mosasaurs. They ate Ichthyosaurs, and they ate and attacked Plesiosaurs. These are the wolves of the ocean, in my opinion. Mosasaurs would have been the things most of us would have been very, very concerned about. But there was a huge, huge Mosasaur. That one is called Tylosaurus. Now let me go back and say about Mosasaurs. Mosasaur is the family name. Mosasaurs. There's not an animal named Mosasaur. There are Mosasaur members like Clydastes and Platecarpus and Tylosaurus. Those are members of them. And there is one called Mosasaurus, but there is not an animal named Mosasaur. So when somebody says, tell me about Mosasaur, you're talking about a whole family of animals. Like dog is the name of a family of animals. There's lots of different dogs, right? Mosasaur is the family name. Well, of all of those Mosasaurs, Tylosaurus is among the largest. This thing is big. It had a snake-like body. And to be honest with you, it's more closely related to snakes than lizards. It's actually more closely related to snakes than lizards. Now, Mosasaur is big. How big? Almost as long as a Tyrannosaurus Rex. That's how big a Mosasaur is. You see what I mean about being dangerous and being the wolf of the sea? Imagine what it would be like if you were swimming around in the ocean and that thing swam up to you. It is absolutely terrifying. But there was something bigger in the ocean than Mosasaurs. Bigger than a Mosasaur? Yeah. This family is called the Pliosaurs. Now, there was different size Pliosaurs. Some Pliosaurs were small. Some Pliosaurs were absolutely enormous, like Kronosaurus. I believe Kronosaurus is found in what is now Australia. I think he's found other places as well, probably in everywhere, but I know they come from Australia. If you choose to do your lesson research on Kronosaurus, please let me know where it lived, because I would be interested, because I can't remember off the top of my head. Once again, it's different. Kronosauruses are different, Pliosaurs are different than Mosasaurs. Let me show you why. Look how thin and flexible and skinny the Mosasaurs were. These were the speed demons of the ocean. These guys were very, very fast. But animals like Kronosaurus were much slower because they were so enormous. So they would not have been as fast. And one of the things that I don't know is how did they catch their food? And you notice I keep saying they because there's more than one pliosaur. There's Pleurodon. Pleurodon is another absolute nightmare. It is a air-breathing animal that has to come up to the surface to breathe. It is a reptile. It's got enormously large teeth. It's got a huge head, kind of a short neck, but very, very powerful. This animal is an example, or both of these, both Kronosaurus and Pleurodon are members of the Pliosaur family, because again, there's families. Ichthyosaurs, they look like dolphins. Plesiosaurs, almost all have a long, skinny neck. Mosasaurs, that have a snake-like body. And Pliosaurs, that have a short neck and very powerful. So all of those animals acted differently. They all lived together, same areas. They interacted, they ate each other, they attacked each other. But each one of those animals was adapted for a different way of surviving. The Ichthyosaurs used speed to catch fish. The Plesiosaurs used their long neck to catch fish. Mosasaurs used their powerful jaws and snake-like body to catch and eat anything. And Pliosaurs simply swam around with their giant heads looking for anything foolish enough to be in the water when they swam by. I've talked a lot about swimming reptiles. I've talked about fish. We got to talk about a whale. A whale called Leviathan. Now, this one's pronounced Leviathan. Leviathan is related to sperm whales, but it's different. Its body shape is different. Its teeth are even larger. This thing is absolutely enormous. It is hard to wrap your mind around how big Leviathan is. But if this is the animal that you choose, if this is what you choose to be the subject of your lesson, I would be interested to know how big Leviathan is. It lived during the Miocene period, I believe, so it was one of the top predators. So, like I told you, the hardest challenge I had about doing this course is figuring out who we can talk about, which animals. I would encourage all of you to go and look to see some of the different things. Learn about ichthyosaurs, learning about plesiosaurs, learn about pliosaurs and mosasaurs, the giant sea turtles. Learn about all of those things. And wait a minute. Did we leave one sea creature out? Did I forget a sea creature that was the largest carnivore that ever lived? Could I have left out something? Would you guys do me a favor? Would you send a message and leave a comment about who you think I might have forgotten? See who I forgot. I covered fish, bony fish. I did armored fish. I did turtle. I did plesiosaurs, Tanistropheus, Dunkleosteus, Ichthyosaurs. I even talked about dolphins. Talked about a whale. Margie. Megalodon. Oh, I'm so sorry I forgot to mention Megalodon. Megalodon is the largest carnivore that ever lived. Its jaws were so huge, this shark ate whales. It hunted and ate whales. It is an absolute monstrosity. It is hard to get your mind around a shark as big as Megalodon. And how big was it? Let me show you how big it was. This is the tooth of a modern great white shark. These are sharks that are alive today. That's the tooth of a modern great white. Here is a tooth of a Megalodon. Great white, Megalodon. He's too big for the frame. Megalodon is such a giant animal. It is the most powerful shark that ever existed and probably had one of the strongest bites of any animal that ever existed on Earth. These things were so enormous. I mean, it's just amazing to think about their size. Look at the size of those jaws. Look at the size of those jaws on that thing. And how big was it? Well, this gives you an idea of how big it is. That is a blue whale. This shark would have been able to eat a blue whale. Now, somebody said, well, how big is this thing? How big is it in reality? Well, let me show you. Here's the difficulty with dealing with how big it really is. Okay. When you find things from a megalodon, all we find are their teeth, because their teeth are the only thing that fossilizes. Their jaws don't even become a fossil because their jaws are made of cartilage. When the shark dies, its body decomposes very quickly. All that is left behind are teeth. So we have to try to estimate the size of the shark by its tooth. So here is a method of doing that. When we look at a great white shark and we find one of its front teeth, the top front teeth, usually the largest tooth, top front. And scientists can know which is which when they find a tooth. They know it's a shark tooth, but they can even tell you where out of the mouth it was found. Like, for instance, this one. Is this the front tooth from up here of a little one? Or is it a tooth from the back corner of a big one? Well, I don't have enough expertise to answer that, but people who study sharks can. Well, they can take this tooth, and there's a formula that can be used. If any of you own a megalodon tooth, whether it's real or a replica, here is a way to estimate the size of your shark. You measure from the tip to the base. You measure across this angle. Every inch means the shark is 10 feet long. So if this tooth was 1 inch long, it would belong to a shark that's 10 feet long. If this tooth is 2 inches long, it would belong to a shark that was 20 feet long. If it's a 3-inch tooth, 30 feet. You see what I mean? So using that, we do the same thing with Megalodon. We have to estimate the size of the shark by the tooth. The problem with that is there's no way to verify our estimates. Are they right or wrong? We do not know. And so we can only estimate its size based on very limited evidence. So here is an example of some of the estimates of the size. The green shark you see is the size of a modern great white. The purple one you see is the modern whale shark. The red one is how big a lot of people think that would be close to its size. And then the gray one would be how big they think they could have gotten. But here's the problem with everything to do with prehistoric life. Just because we found a big tooth doesn't mean that's as big as their tooth could be. Their tooth might be twice this size. We have not found every tooth from a shark. We don't know how big they could be. So some people say blue whales are bigger than megalodons. Probably so. And blue whales, as we know, blue whales will they eat live food, so they are technically a predator. So Megalodon is not the biggest predator, probably, but it's certainly the biggest shark and the biggest one we think of as being an aggressive predator who would have eaten anything. Here's an example. This was going into a museum somewhere. I don't know where. I wish I did know. But they're doing a model of Megalodon. That probably gives you the best idea of its size by looking at that man standing in front of it. And let me say this about Megalodon. There was an animal living with Megalodon who I believe would have been capable of defending itself. That gets back to Leviathan. Leviathan was probably capable of defending itself against a shark like Megalodon. But in a fight, in a battle between them, the whale who is an air breather, has got to go up to get air again. And that's where Megalodon has an advantage over this animal. Because during the battle, during the fight, the poor whale can't hold its breath forever if, in fact, they were fighting each other. The whale's got to go up to get air, and that's what gives Megalodon the opportunity to attack. So in my opinion, I think these animals probably stayed away from each other intentionally, sort of like orcas and great white sharks today. Great white sharks stay away from orcas because they know that the orcas could work as a team to kill them. Orcas stay away from great white sharks usually because they know they can eat their babies. Now, if they don't have any babies, they're not afraid of them, I don't think. But I think they would stay out of the way if they saw one another. Sometimes they don't. We see videos of them fighting, and that would have happened in the past. All right. Looking at my watch, that's the end of class. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you've learned something new. I would like for you to do your lesson, please. Pick one animal I talked about. Tell me how big it was and where it lived. And if you'd like to add some more information, I'd like to see it. If you'd like to try to draw a picture, I would love to see that as well. But post everything. We love, love, love your pictures on a Facebook page. We love seeing pictures of you and your kids, your toy collection, your books, breaking open geodes, anything you want to post, we want to see. In fact, let's make today Pet Day. If you have a pet that you'd like to show off, show us your pet. That would be a fun topic as well. All right, remember, coming out soon, more information about the book. I'm very excited about the book. And also keep in mind, you guys, that if any of you are interested, again, if you want to do a live remote, you can. You're welcome. You're absolutely welcome. I would enjoy doing it very much. And with that, class is officially dismissed. Have a great week. I'll see you all back Friday. Now I will answer some questions from you.